When you watch a horror movie, you think to yourself, this isn't to be real. You don't picture that that person could be sat with you in a cinema. You sort of picture someone like Michael Myers, a stalker with supernatural abilities, the ability to dodge bullets, to take extraordinary acts of punishment to the body and continue. Yet, what I've seen from the Coronavirus Lessons Learned to Date report puts someone like Michael Myers and Jason into a different category in comparison to that of what we witnessed with someone like Michael Gove.
We think if somebody kills someone, that's murder, you go to prison. You kill 10 people, you go to Texas, they hit you with a brick, that's what they do. 20 people, you go to a hospital, they look through a small window at you forever. And over that, we can't deal with it, Someone who's killed 100,000 people, we're almost going, well done, well done. You killed 100,000 people? Well, you must get up very early in the morning. I can't even get down the gym.
We were not following a policy of herd immunity.
Now it's interesting he says that, because I've looked at the House of Commons report, Coronavirus Lessons Learned to Date, and it doesn't say that at all. It says quite the opposite. In fact, it states, given the large numbers of deaths predicted, it was surprising that the initial fatalistic assumption about the impossibility of suppressing the virus was not challenged. This amounted in practice to accepting that herd immunity by infection was the inevitable outcome, given that the United Kingdom had no firm prospect of a vaccine. It was also a serious mistake to get to the point where community testing was stopped early in the pandemic. Disturbing stuff. And yet, not many in the media challenged this. Piers Morgan did.
That you should clarify that the UK government was never also pursuing a policy of herd immunity.
Well, Patrick Vallon said, actually on Radio 4, on record, on tape, that that's exactly what we were doing. And so when you...
Hey everyone, welcome back to Political X. For more knowledge and updates on UK, European and US politics, make sure you subscribe to this channel. So obviously the COVID report has come out, the report that looked into and analysed some areas of what took place for the government's response into the COVID pandemic. And obviously at the beginning of this you saw that there was one point that they made which was on herd immunity, and I felt it necessary to bring up some old footage of Michael Gove denying that herd immunity was a policy. Part of the reason for me doing this is because I have not seen anyone bring it up with the government. No one has said anything to anyone on media that I've seen saying, why have you instigated a policy of herd immunity? It is illegal. You are not allowed to test on the public or do clinical trials on the public without our authority. So I've put together a series of clips trying to tell the story of what actually took place, and then we're going to listen to Michael Gove and his analysis of the government not implementing herd immunity. So let's hear a definition of what herd immunity is first.
Herd immunity, that's the idea that once enough of a population has been exposed to the virus, the population as a whole will build up natural immunity to it. That mattered because it suggested allowing the virus to spread may have been a deliberate policy.
This was backed up by Dominic Cummings, who put in claims that herd immunity was a policy. He didn't understand why they had changed that as a policy. He thought that's what they did, so what's the problem? Have a listen to Dominic Cummings talking to Jeremy Hunt about herd immunity.
Yes, and saying it's not part of it is completely wrong. I think there's a sort of semantic problem now that, and I look back through all of our WhatsApps between me and the Prime Minister and Hancock and Chris Vallance and whatnot. Essentially, there's a sort of semantic question about, is the goal herd immunity? Do we want herd immunity? Versus, is that the basic plan? Of course, no one wants this to happen. No one wanted any of it to happen. But the point was, herd immunity was regarded as an unavoidable fact. It was the only question that we practically had was one of timing. So, I mean, we can go through the chronology of it, but after some SAGE members said on the 11th publicly well, you know, we're going to be shielding people, and then by the time they come out of shielding, the rest of the population will have herd immunity. That was the plan. I'm completely baffled as to why Number 10 is trying to deny that, because that was the official plan. You can see it in the Cobra documents that I brought along. Hancock himself and the chief scientist and the chief medical officer were all briefing senior journalists during the week of the 9th. This is what the official plan is.
The concerning thing is that was not the consensus from other areas of the world. The WHO did not endorse herd immunity. It was brought up in Sweden and then it was retracted as an idea and denied, even though they clearly implemented it. They denied all knowledge of that implementation because you are not allowed to kill your own population. We went off on a wild, off-the-track beat into the middle of Crazy Town, trying to figure out what to do. And because of this claim of groupthink, which is the idea that all ideas are isolated in the group and they don't think outside the box, they decided to experiment on the population, which resulted in 160,000 deaths, and then they started to deny it. Have a listen.
Sweden pursued a policy of herd immunity, which most scientists thought was nuts.
No,
It now turns out it was nuts. It's also true, because we know this from Patrick Vallance, that we were pursuing a policy of herd immunity right to the point the modelers came back and said it would cost 500,000 lives, at which point there was a screeching U-turn. That was another one of the terrible mistakes that we made in the early stages of this pandemic.
I think it is also the case that it's important that you should clarify that the UK government was never also pursuing a policy
Well, Patrick
of herd
Vallance
immunity.
said actually on Radio 4, on record, on tape, that that's exactly what we were doing. And so when you guys say we weren't doing it, why did no one tell the chief scientific advisor? Because he was under the impression that's exactly what we were doing.
Advisors advise, ministers decide. That was never
You were
the
following
policy
the
that we were
science at
following.
the time. Do you remember? You told us every single day we are following the science, not guided by, not listening and making our own decisions. We're doing what the scientists tell us. Your chief scientific advisor, on I think it was March the 16th, on Radio 4, around that week, he said quite unequivocally that we were following herd immunity.
Also, because most people, the vast majority of people, get a mild illness, to build up some degree of herd immunity as well, so that more people are immune to this disease and we reduce the transmission. At the same time, we protect those who are most vulnerable from it.
Would suppress this virus. All of the evidence from previous epidemics suggests that when you do that and then you release it, it all comes back again. So the other part of this is to make sure that we don't end up with a sudden peak again in the winter, which is even larger, which causes even more problems. So we want to suppress it, not get rid of it completely, which you can't do anyway.
Unless, of course, you're Hong Kong, China, Vietnam, Taiwan, South Korea, Australia, New Zealand. You can do it then, but not in Britain.
Not suppress it so we get the second peak, and also allow enough of us who are going to get mild illness to become immune to this, to help with the sort of whole population response, which would protect everybody.
Yeah, I mean, that herd immunity I know you talked about yesterday.
He has literally described herd immunity, the process, and the plan that the government's going to take.
When you were appearing with the Prime Minister, in terms of building up a herd immunity within the UK, what sort of percentage of people need to have contracted the virus?
Probably about 60% or so. And we think that this virus is likely to be one that comes back year on year, become like a seasonal virus, and communities will become immune to it. And that's going to be an important part of controlling this longer term.
60%?
60% is the sort of figure you need to get herd immunity.
I mean, even with that, even looking at the sort of the best case scenario, I know we were talking last week and you were saying, you know, half of 1% to 1% fatality in something like this. That's an awful lot of people dying in this country.
Well, I mean, of course, we do face the prospect of, as the Prime Minister said yesterday, of an increasing number of people dying. That is a real prospect. This is a nasty disease. For most people, it's a mild disease. It's important.
And if you're still not convinced that it's government policy, and it is hard to take, have a listen to the Prime Minister talk about spreading the disease throughout the population on This Morning.
Essentially, trying to spread this out so that it doesn't all happen at once and overwhelm the NHS, and that you can actually delay it into perhaps the summer when it's a little quieter and the ordinary flu might have died down a wee bit. Is that what you're doing?
It's a very, very important question, and that's where a lot of the debate has been. And one of the theories is that, you know, perhaps you could sort of take it on the chin, take it all in one go, and allow the disease, as it were, to move through the population.
So what he's essentially saying is to have herd immunity to spread it, and then to shut it off so we don't overwhelm the NHS. That's the plan. It's herd immunity and lockdown combined together. That is what they want to do. It is illegal to kill your own population. Just listen to what Valence says and compare it to what Boris has just said.
Allow enough of us who are going to get mild illness to become immune to this, to help with the sort of whole population response, which would protect everybody.
Yeah, I mean, that herd immunity, I know you talked about yesterday.
Without really taking as many draconian measures, I think we need to strike a balance. I think it's very important. We've got a fantastic NHS. We'll give them all the support that they need. We'll make sure that they have all the preparations, all the kit that they need for us to get through it. But I think it would be better if we take all the measures that we can now just to, you know, to stop the peak of the disease being as difficult for the NHS as it might be. I think there are things that we may be able to do.
Little to no PPE, no production for PPE, no ability to track or trace. So what does that leave you as options? Lockdown or herd immunity? They went for an experiment. They experimented on the British people. The idea of herd immunity. Get them infected, it's not a problem. It's a massive problem because you're dealing with a disease that you don't know enough about. They keep telling us they're following the science, but they didn't know there was a thing called long COVID, which now about 1 million people in the UK are suffering from. That is damage to lungs, that is extreme fatigue, that's inability to work. That means the population that is healthy and has survived are now probably going to have to support that 1 million. Now have a listen to Michael Gove once again deny that this was a policy.
And the attempt by the British government to deny what your own chief scientific advisor said on the record then, I'm afraid will not survive a public inquiry, because he said it on the record on radio.
We were not following a policy of herd immunity.
Why did he say we were?
You will have to ask Sir Patrick, great man who offers
So he didn't know what
advice.
policy the government was following, and he's your chief scientific advisor.
Yes, but I'm the minister, and I'm telling you that we were not following a policy.
So you were following the
immunity.
science, but ignoring the science.
You can see that Gove is starting to become quite pressured here. He's becoming uncomfortable. He moves around in his seat quite a bit. All signs that he's not enjoying this. But would many of us enjoy being interrogated by Piers Morgan?
Our policy is
heavy amounts of stuttering going on there. Stress. He's gritting his teeth.
Informed by the science, and one of the reasons.
Yeah, but you said at the time you were following the science. You can't be informed and following it and then ignoring it. It's either one or the other. You're either following it or you're not. I can go back and play 100 clips of ministers saying you were following the science. You said it every single day.
We've been following scientific and medical advice.
We follow very carefully and deliberately the scientific and medical advice. The government's approach is to follow scientific and medical advice.
Now you're saying the chief scientific advisor had no...
Heavily moving around in his seat. There's a bit of a smirk there.
Idea what he was talking about, and was talking about a policy that none of you were following.
No, I'm not saying that he had no idea what he was talking about. He knows a great deal more about these issues than a number of commentators.
So he knows he's lying when he says that. He's smirking as if this is funny, and he's putting down Piers Morgan for what he's saying, even though he's on the money. He's talking the truth. This is really sick stuff.
But the whole point is that when you receive scientific advice, you weigh it against a number of different considerations.
So he advised you to pursue herd immunity and you said no. Is that the new position?
No.
I'm hoping everyone who has listened to this by now has come to the conclusion that the Tories are scum, They are more than happy to kill you, then lie that they tried to kill you. I mean, it's literally living with a psychopath. I mean, even Michael Myers doesn't do this. He's actively trying to kill you and he's not lying about it. I mean, this is just beyond belief. Michael Gove is scum. The Tories are scum for what they've done, and they should be punished.
It is the case that scientific advisors and other advisors lay out a range of facts and a range of options, and they allow ministers to look at that. Obviously, there is a boundary. There are some things that any government could do which would be in defiance of the science, but the whole point about scientific advice is that it lays out that there's
well, that's what we kept saying. But you lot kept telling us you were following the science. Now you're guided by it, but then end up doing different things.
At all times.
We followed the science throughout this, building on that science.
We will be relying, as ever, on the science to inform us, as we have from the beginning.
I'm just saying the record will speak for itself. You can go back and listen to all the interviews. I know what Patrick Vallance said. I know what he said because I heard it on the radio. Anyway,
yes, but I know how these decisions were taken. I don't think you were in the room.
No, but I tell you where I will be in the room. I wasn't allowed to be in the room, but I will be in the room for the public inquiry, Mr. Gove.
So a number of things to take away from that. The long COVID issue is increasing, and a lot of people don't even realise they've got issue with it, and it will take effect on them either now or potentially in the future. In fact, we have no idea of what we've really infected ourselves with. The final thing to take away from that is Michael Gove isn't lying just to Susanna and Piers. He's lying to everyone who's watching that TV programme. And a lot of you who have watched that programme will have taken in what Michael Gove said and given them benefit of the doubt. That man is one of the most corrupt, nasty pieces of work. He has lied to you, to your face, that they had a policy of herd immunity, and yet the evidence is completely stacked against them. If you have been affected by this, look up Article 14 in the ECHR, European Court of Human Rights, which the UK signed up to. It clearly states you are not allowed to actively kill your citizens, which is exactly what they've done. If you've been affected by this, consider this a form of corporate manslaughter. Get in contact with a lawyer, because it is outrageous what is taking place, and it's outrageous that the media have not jumped on this a little bit more, especially when you've got Gove denying it, and the report that has come from Conservative Tories completely countermands what he said there. Michael Gove, I will say this to his face, Michael Gove is scum. So are the Tories. Don't ever vote for them again. Get yourself a lawyer. I hope you enjoyed my political observations this week. If you'd like to support me, please share the video with others and post about it on social media. If you're keen for more, subscribe, comment, like, and hit that notification button. Thanks for listening, and see you next time on Political X.